Welcome to the demo lab here at TA Instruments. In this video, I'm going to talk about differential scanning calorimetry, or DSC, what the technique is, how it works, and what information you can get from the data. Firstly then, what actually is DSC? The clue is in the name. Differential means we are comparing two things, in this case a sample with a reference. Scanning means we are changing temperature, and calorimetry means we are measuring changes in heat. Summarising that then, in DSC, the difference in power needed to raise or cool sample and reference materials between two temperatures is measured. And that's all there is to DSC. We take a sample, usually a white powder in the pharmaceutical world, and a reference, usually an empty pan, and we ask the DSC, please heat or cool these two things between these two temperatures at a constant rate, and tell me how much more or less power the sample needed than the reference. Once the DSC has done that, we get some data in the form of difference in power on the y-axis versus temperature on the x-axis. Typical data for a crystalline material melting might look like this. Since this is an explainer video, I'd like to take a moment to explain briefly how a DSC actually works. All DSC instruments need to be able to change temperature. To increase temperature, a heater is needed. For some reason, these are referred to as furnaces, which in my mind makes me think of an industrial steelmaking plant. But in reality, the furnace is a small electric heater mounted under the sample and reference. DSC instruments also need to be able to lower temperature. This can be done by simply turning off the furnace, but to achieve faster cooling rates, many DSCs have active cooling, typically with a refrigerated cooling system, RCS, like this, or they will circulate liquid nitrogen. TA Instruments offers 3 RCS systems, which cool to different temperatures. This one cools to -90 degrees centigrade, while liquid nitrogen cooling can achieve -180 degrees centigrade. Which type of cooling you use will depend on the types of material you want to study. In addition to a furnace, a DSC must also measure temperature, and this is done with thermocouples. A TA Instruments DSC has up to 3 thermocouples, one for the sample, one for the reference, and depending upon the model, one located between the sample and reference, the T0 thermocouple. You can see the location of the thermocouples and the furnace in this cutaway diagram. The sample and reference materials are encapsulated in pans. Pans come in different sizes and can be made of different materials, depending on the temperature to which you will heat them. In the pharmaceutical world, we typically use pans made of aluminium. Aluminium is light and conducts heat very well, so it's an ideal material for use in a calorimeter. It does, however, melt at 660 degrees centigrade, so I would suggest not using aluminium pans if you're heating to temperatures higher than that. Much better to use platinum or ceramic pans instead. Talk to your local applications specialist to see the full range of pans and lids available and their applications. Sample masses are quite small, typically 5 to 15 milligrams, and pans may have a lid or be left open. Whether you use a lid or not is actually quite important. Ideally, you should always use a lid, as this allows heat conduction from the sample to the DSC in all directions. Whether the lid is airtight or not is also important, especially for looking at materials that may lose water or solvent on heating. But we're going to look at those in more detail in a later video. Unless you're making detailed measurements on heat capacity, the reference material can be an empty pan. To make a measurement then, we tell the DSC to heat our sample and reference materials from an initial temperature to a final temperature at a specified rate. I'm only going to refer to heating from this point on, but remember, the same principles apply to cooling. Usually, but not always, the heating rate is constant, say 10 degrees per minute. It's important to choose the heating rate carefully so that you interpret the results properly, and the heating rate doesn't have to be linear. Once the DSC has these values, it has all the information needed to start an experiment. Other information, such as the sample mass, can be added. but this is not needed to perform an experiment. I should add, however, that a DSC should be calibrated prior to use at the heating rate you're going to use for your experiment. Calibration is usually performed with a certified reference material, or CRM, such as indium or tin. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to know more about calibration. The instrument will apply power through the furnace to the sample and reference, and the temperatures of both will start to rise. If the sample is very boring, undergoes no phase changes upon heating, and has the same heat capacity as the reference, then both it and the reference will increase in temperature at the same rate, and no difference in power will be measured. You would see a baseline centered at 0 on the y-axis. In the more likely case that the sample does undergo a phase change, then we will see something, typically a peak. That's because a change in phase will be either endothermic, in the case of melting for instance, or exothermic, in the case of crystallization. Since a lot of samples are crystalline, let's consider melting. Before the melting temperature, a crystalline material will increase in temperature as power is supplied to it. However, when melting starts, the sample will instead use the power being supplied to break the bonds holding the molecules in a crystal lattice. Hence, while melting proceeds, the sample will remain at a constant temperature while all the bonds are broken. The reference, by virtue of not doing anything, will continue to increase in temperature, and there will be a temperature difference between the sample and the reference. Because the equations of heat flow are well understood, it is possible to calculate the difference in power between the sample and reference materials, and this leads to a peak in the DSC data, rather like this. What information can we get from these data? The first thing we can determine is the temperature at which the phase transition occurs. We can define this either as the first deviation from baseline, called the onset temperature, or as the peak maximum, the peak temperature. It doesn't matter which you use, so long as you define which you are using. Although I note that when a sample undergoes multiple phase transitions, it can be quite difficult to determine onset temperatures if they are close together and so overlapping. The second thing we can determine is the area under the peak, which will tell us the total amount of heat absorbed or released during the transition. Finally, the position of the baseline tells us something about the heat capacity of our sample. Heat capacity, you may remember, is the amount of energy required to raise a material in temperature. It affects the position of the baseline because the y-axis values are the difference in power needed to change the temperature of the sample and reference materials. And the higher the heat capacity of one of those, the greater the difference in power supplied. And that, in essence, is all DSC is. There are many types of DSC instruments, so you should talk with your local product specialist to see which is the most suitable for your application. Clearly though, DSC is a very widely used analytical tool in many sectors, and that alone should tell you that the information it provides is very valuable. In the next few videos in this series, we'll look in more detail at some typical applications of DSC, so I hope you'll join me for those. Otherwise, I hope you found this discussion useful, and I'll see you again soon.